Good morning, everyone. How's everybody today? Welcome. Glad that you took time out of your day to join us. We have an interesting presentation today by our Executive Director of Facilities, Randy Powell. And I know he has a guest here with him as well, so I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you, Celeste. Can everyone hear me without the mic? No? Okay. So it'll be a little difficult because I'm going to drive the slides as Mike Hansen from Future Controls goes through our building management system. So real quick, if you would, Mike, stand up. Mike is with Future Controls. They're our service provider for our building management system, BMS, in the industry, and that's what we'll be discussing today. So what is a BMS? Well, it's a computer-based control system installed in buildings and facilities that controls and monitors the building's mechanical, electrical systems, such as ventilations, lighting, power, fire at sometimes, and security systems. So really it brings a lot of systems in together and allows you to control that via the computer. So down there, those other bullets, it integrates hardware, software, communications to collect data. So we can trend temperatures across space. We can trend pressures across pumps. We can use that to predict or monitor our HVAC systems and also achieve alerts. So if the air handler in this building went down, theoretically, through this system, we would know it before, in our facilities department, before we felt the increase in temperature here in the room. We can get an alarm through the BMS. Other names in the industry are BAS, Building Automation System. Some directors, facilities departments, contractors will also call it an EMS, Energy Management System, because a function of this system is we can't really increase our energy efficiency through being able to monitor, trend, and manage our assets through the BMS. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into it. And Mike here from Future Controls is going to kind of help me navigate it because this is brand new. And it's exciting for us because we are just wrapping up the end of a large capital expense project to upgrade our controls. And I don't know if, Mike, can we pull up what our used to look like?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
You want me to drive?
Yeah, it might be easier if you drive. But what you see here is our new graphics page. So right now I can see all three campuses from, I never have to leave my office anymore. It's kind of a brilliant thing. But I can know if Grand Lakes has an HVAC issue, if Gray Oaks has an HVAC issue, or if our campus here has an issue. Yeah, we'll show them. Yep. So this, probably in the late summer, early fall, this is how our system was. And a lot of our systems weren't talking to our building management system. And now, if we want to go back to the new, here's where we are today. So I can see all three campuses, and we'll drill down into, right now, he drilled down into the main campus. And now he's going into 6th floor, this is A building. So in the lobby of A building on the 6th floor, I have 3 air handlers, and I can see now all 3 of those air handlers. And I don't know if you can zoom in a little with the wheel. There you go. So some of you in the back, I know what the space temperature is in that lobby without having to visit the lobby. I know if I get a hot-cold complaint from that lobby, I can go in here and make sure the unit's running. So here we can see that fan coil unit 6 alpha, 6A, it's running. The chilled water valves is open. And I'm dumping 77-degree air into that lobby. I don't have to send a technician up to the lobby to detect the temperature in that space. Likewise, if that fan were to go off, I can get an alarm in my building, down in the ops building, and I know I have a fan failure or an HVAC failure in that space. What's that? Yeah, between noon and 1, if something fails, we're not going to respond. That's our siesta. But no. So here's another item. So across a filter, we can detect a pressure drop. So the pressure on, say, the upstream side of the filter across the downstream side of the filter can tell us if the filter's dirty. Now, how can we apply that? Well, one, it's nice to know when the filters are dirty, but the other way is something we call predictive maintenance. So rather than the maintenance folks going in there every quarter and changing that filter, whether it needs it or not, we can set parameters. So if that has 0.6 inches of water column pressure across it, then we can change the filters based on a condition. So what they call predictive maintenance versus preventative maintenance. So that's one aspect. Energy efficiencies. So I can go in, so here's the chillers at Chateau. I can go in here now as we improve our controls and drive energy efficiency. Right now I have 2 chilled water pumps running. Those 2 green pumps on the middle, and I have my pump water 2 in standby. We can cycle those based on the demand in that building. So maybe only run 1 pump, which saves me energy. Other things we're thinking, the trio, the last meal in there is served on Saturday at 9 o'clock, let's say, and then we really don't need to condition that space until Tuesday, probably about noon, when the workers come back to start the prep. We could bump the set point up of that space 2 or 3 degrees Sunday, Monday, and halfway into Tuesday and drive energy savings. Automated, so we just set the set points and we let it go. Bauer Chapel's set up that way, correct? Yes, sir. So Bauer, we set up with occupancy sensors. There's sensors in Bauer Chapel that will detect occupancy via CO2 emissions from all the occupants, and that will change our set point. So when it detects people in Bauer, it will call for cooling and also open the outdoor air dampers and bring in more fresh air. And this can all be set up through our building management system. Building O lobby? And that's a great point. There are buildings where we're going to go back and look at what should be the set point, and we can have better controls over this now. This room is a perfect example of bad controls. So right now I have no control over this building, this room, other than the thermostat on the wall. And traditionally what happens, and I see this a lot in town halls, they'll come in and it's too warm, and probably a Kayla or someone, she's gonna probably read, yeah, I shouldn't have used Kayla. She'll change the thermostat and drive it down. And then when everyone comes in, it's too cold. We can set that set point so this space is always at 72 degrees. And so as it starts ramping up, if it's 72 plus or minus 2 degrees, it will start calling for cooling, and we'll be able to see that in the BMS. Any other interesting? Exterior lighting, a lot of our street lamps are tied to the BMS. I say a lot. Go ahead, Mr. Benson. We can set the parameters in here. I don't know if you can show any of that, Mike? Well, here's on lighting control to demonstrate how we can do it. Right now, it's tracking sunrise, sunset, and that will change every day. So then down at the bottom, I don't know if you can wheel in on that a little bit. We've set up the commands for our clubhouse streetlights to come on 30 minutes before sunset and 45 minutes after sunrise. So those street lamps, and that will automatically adjust itself based on the clock that it's pulling off the internet. So I don't have to go into the buildings at daylight savings is a great example and reset those old manual timers. It's done for me. Now, not all of our campus is set up this way, and we have a 5-year plan as part of our operations plan in our department to upgrade our controls over the next 5 years. So, we're slowly getting more of our buildings into where we can see it. I don't know if you can go out to our building. Our building's a great example. It's newly constructed, about 3 years old now? So every unit in our building, I can tell what the temperature, and I'm not watching people, I'm not listening to people. I'm just watching the space conditions, temperature and heating, all right? This isn't Alexa or your smart TV tracking what you're watching, but I can tell what units might be off. So everything with a red alarm or a red dot, but that's just telling me the fan is not running. So that means that unit is not calling for cooling or heating. And if it had an X through it, I've lost that unit and I would get an alarm. Then, especially if you're traveling over the summer, I certainly don't want your unit to sit there for, let's say, a week between your housekeeper coming in or maintenance doing regular checks. We would get an alarm and we can go up there and address the problem before it becomes a much bigger problem, say mold setting in or something in the unit. Float switch is another example. So in every unit that I'm aware of, HVAC generates water off your condenser coils and collects in the condensate pan and is supposed to go to daylight through the condensate drain. Well, those condensate drains can become clogged. So if that starts to back up, it will trip a float switch and shut your unit off before it floods the floors, ideally.
That's in place now?
In most units, most everyone I'm familiar with, it will. But now I can get an alarm that tells me, wow, your unit went off. I need to find out why that went off. And we can go up there and address the issue much faster. I think you just had the hot water heaters. Here I can, what hot water is leaving the 3 boilers in R, and then what's the return hot water on that system. We have a ways to go on this campus. Gray Oaks, Grand Lake is building this system as they go, which is really nice. And we're playing catch up on this campus due to age. Edwin gets alarms on his phone. I think you get them now, Mike, right? Yeah, Mike gets a lot of our alarms. I don't get them on my phone, I get them on my email. There's one unit in this building that trips a lot for condensate, and that was just a controls issue. Those will come through, float switch, float switch, float switch. Well, we've always had this system. So this system is Schneider Electric is the supplier. The building controls on this campus has been around for a long time. It's just adding controls throughout campus. So A tower, you can pull up. A tower, I can't see the units, the individual units. I don't know what temperature is in A101 or 102 because it's an older building and we haven't implemented those controls in the units. But like our building,
Put it there as kind of a jab to Randy, hey, you want to get
yeah. So as we develop our 5-year plan, this will eventually be addressed. We're looking at some of our priority assets first, Chateau. I can't allow a chiller to go down for any length of time within Chateau or an air handling unit or even a hot water heater. There's ACA regulations around water temperature and what it's supposed to be doing. So that's a high priority in my plan to upgrade the campus controls. Likewise with Orchid Terrace. And then from there, we're looking at each building and saying, okay, where do we need to target our assets for the most value? Is it in the units to prevent condensate? So I know one thing we talked about the other day is tying in the float sensors initially. So I know if I lose a unit due to the float tripping and condensate building up would be a high priority. Because if you think about what a condensate pan overflowing could potentially do to wood floors, replacing wood floors, if I can avoid a $2,000, $3,000 wood floor repair, that's value to me and it's worth the investment. Oh.
Did you say that this system started?
No, it started here. So, one thing about this industry is once you buy into a system, you really don't want to switch because you have to go back and change all the sensors. So we're pretty much committed to using Schneider Electric Echo, what's it called now? EcoStructure. And that's what went in, so that's our design standard. That's what went into Gray Oaks, that's what's going into Grand Lake. So they're getting the latest, greatest of EcoStructure. We're now playing catch up on this campus to upgrade ours. So part of a CapEx program and this was a 19 project, we updated all the graphics across campus. We've tied in a lot of the building controls, the main entry point from these individual controls, so we can bring it into Schneider Electric's most current software. So we look like and feel like a lot more like Gray Oaks than we ever have. But we still have buildings like A Tower, G Tower. I can't see the individual units. I'm sorry, sir?
When the lights go out,
Well, we'll know about it. It depends on what lights. Our buildings do it.
I presume everything is geared towards electricity. And when that goes down, our generators kick in.
Automatically. So we have ATSs, automatic transfer switches, in all of our generators. Those generators only power, in the AL units, our elevators, our fridges, and one outlet per unit. We can't power the street lights. We can't power pedestrian lights, lake fountains, none of that. It's just really the critical items within a unit. In Chateau, when we upgraded, I think everyone's aware of this, we can push the entire load in Chateau once we added that new 1 meg generator. So ACA requires just emergency circuits. Moorings Park went above that requirement, and we can push the entire building, the entire load, to include, I think, 96 hours of runtime on fuel. So.
G building, we get a surge of water pressure, and then we get up and turn it on. It just trickles on very low pressure, very slow rate. Called on it, by the time they got there the other day, it had burst on again, and we have a lot of,
What, and this is G?
that's it, 7th floor of G.
Well, I'll take a look at that. That could be driven by the booster pumps. So on the second floor, there's a set of pumps that keep the water pressure around 60 PSI. So that shouldn't be happening. I'll follow up on that.
You're saying if my heat goes down, you know it, I don't have to call.
Not in Orchid Terrace yet. Our building is on OPQ. We can see residential units, but not Orchid Terrace. Areas of it we do. I don't know if you can pull up Clubhouse. I can see the air handlers in the boardroom, the grill rooms.
Yeah, all the grill rooms, all the.
Boy. I'd hate to even take a guess. Part of our plan, we're starting to work with Future Controls for our capital requests in '21, is identifying those assets that are not in the system that we want to be able to see. So if you take, I can't see this room right now. So, you know, that's potentially an ad for '21. In Chateau, I can't see the hallways, so space temperature in the hallways. Because if I know Cypress Wing hallway is down, then I probably know that an air handler is down. To add a sensor, this is probably a couple thousand. Yeah, with the thermostat, pulling the IT wire.
This is on the old system, I just cannot access it from this
Yeah.
graphic.
And so in some spaces, there's sensors there, but we have yet to pull it into the software. So this upgrade we started in '19 wasn't only just adding devices in the field, but it's also updating all of our graphics. So how we view things.
Randy, how do they adjust the clocks for daylight saving time?
If it's a manual clock, we go around. We've probably missed some. Is this where we're going?
No, I wondered if there's a button that you press and everything moves at one time.
No. The only place I've ever seen that is some of the corporate offices I worked in. They were tied in. School buildings, I think, were really good about it. We have a lot of manual battery clocks around here, so.
This looks pretty, you know, complicated, like going up and throwing a switch and having it on or off. You're getting into all this fine tuning and things. You on call 24 hours a day for this thing?
So we do have maintenance technicians on call 24 hours, and then we have a call down tree for managers. If our technician couldn't resolve the issue, they would escalate it to the manager, typically Edwin for inside the buildings. We are starting training on this. Justin Bastis, who some of you might know, he's predominantly in charge of the Chateau. He's been doing a lot of training with Mike here to understand the new system, as well as Edwin. And then we'll look at sending him to further training, but then also manage their rights. I've also seen systems, and Mike can probably attest, where people get in there and start moving things, and the building doesn't behave like it was designed to behave. Especially if you start messing with the amount of outdoor air you're bringing in, especially in this environment, you start bringing in too much humidity and you can't remove the water from the air. Our buildings will have issues. And that's where you got to limit your controls and your access, because you can really get things off kilter. I had an account in Philadelphia where that happened, and you know, people went into the system, some of our technicians, and thought they were doing good, and would just immediately think they were going to solve the problem of the occupant by changing the amount of fresh air or fan speeds, and pretty soon the building doesn't have enough pressure, has too much pressure, too much outdoor air. You got to really kind of manage who has what authorities in here. I think I answered the question.
This will be the next time that all this is running and up before we've had another hurricane. And you brought up the
No, what we do, Barb Wagner, I think many of you might know Barb, works in our reefer department. She puts together a 3-ring binder now. We started this about a year and a half ago. And it goes through the operations of your unit, how you access facility services, your cleaning schedules in the book. But she covers the emergency support, meaning the outlet, the fridge, the elevator. And then a lesson we learned last year for Dorian, where we probably didn't do as good a job as we could in preparation for hurricane season, reviewing that. And in Dorian, we had a lot of calls where people didn't know where their emergency outlet was, and we were going to individual units to point that out. Well, we want to start that in May or June, so we can send the technician to your unit and make sure your emergency outlet is identified, marked, and you're aware it's there. No, not in all units. Some have just red stenciling. I think the A tower, when it was refurbed, they renovated, they just put red stenciling on the white outlet plate. So. Yeah, so this is a Q unit. 201, anyone from 201? Want to see if your space is still cool? All right. Hopefully it's up there. Yep. So we can zoom in on that. We're putting out 2 CFMs, and so the Q building's got 2 zones. You got 2 thermostats controlling it. They're pretty much even right now at 2 cubic feet per minute flow. Right now you have Sports Center on, you left your TV on, and I think in zone 1 is Judge Judy. So. Dr. Phil? Yeah, none of our emergency devices are tied into that. That's really through our SARA system. And I don't foresee that ever being tied into this. Potentially our fire system. I don't know if you've done that for other accounts, Mike. So fire panels could come through this. Our jockey pumps, stuff like that. Yeah, no, there's no air quality parameters in this. The only thing around air would be airflow, the volume or velocity across that space, cubic feet per minute. I'm not aware of the only air quality thing. I don't know if you can go to some of the garages. Is CO2 monitors in the garage. So there are automatic fans in all the garages. Well, I shouldn't say all, because some of the more open garages, obviously A and G Tower, don't need them because they're so open. But based on code, if there's a requirement for a fan, they'll be tied to a CO sensor. And so if a car or cars are idling in there or whatever, these fans will kick on to get us back to the right ppm or parts per million of CO. So here's what building is this? OPQ? Q building. And we took or Future Controls took the floor plans. And so you can see where the fans are, the CO2 sensors, everything's at 0. So there's really nothing generating or not enough CO2 being generated to be detected. Or I'm sorry, CO.
Yeah, CO. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a CO2 for your dining rooms here in the grill.
Yeah.
Since you're on the Q building,
Yes, ma'am.
can you show me the storage?
I don't think those are tied in. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, I live in the H building. Last one.
Yeah.
You talked about some.
Yeah, and that's where, right now, none of the garden apartments are tied into any of this, but that's certainly an area that we would look at because of exactly that issue. If we can detect those backups before they flow over your condensate pan, or even if they float over, but we catch it soon enough, we can avoid a lot of damage and disruption to the residents' lives, inconvenience. But the garden apartments are not tied in to any of this. The garden apartments are in some ways a little unique. Like a lot of our other buildings have central plants serving them or major units. So the towers are driven off of 2 chillers here in the clubhouse through cold water pipes that pump the chilled water from the clubhouse over to the towers and back. LM&N is on a chilled water loop, but the H apartments or garden apartments are on individual residential type split systems or DX systems. But that's an area we would be looking at. There, our priority would be just the water sensors. Any other questions? How do we do? 30 minutes, it's not bad. I do have one slide. I think it kind of summarizes, how where we see the value of this is really receiving alerts for our assets, when things go down, when things go offline, and being able to be a little more proactive. Because if we knew this auditorium went offline and we knew it electronically, we could react probably before any of the occupants understood that or be up here trying to work a resolution. Trending assets to understand operations. So in the Bauer Chapel, we had some issues where too much humidity was entering that building. And that's because we didn't have controls. We didn't understand that the outdoor air damper was open and bring in way too much fresh air. And you can look at those trends and understand, how your building's operating and drive efficiencies as well as avoid issues. Centralized management of facilities. We view this as down the road, having these screens up, and anyone been down our building and visited Linda, Shannon, Rhonda, well, having these screens, the alarm section of these screens at their desk. So if they see something going into alarm, they can just pick up the radio and call Laz or any of the technicians and say, hey, look, we just had, a chilled water pump go offline in A tower or what have you. And just be ahead of it and not having to wait till a resident says, hey, why is my unit at 82 degrees? And then ultimately adjusting operations remotely for energy efficiency and manage that demand. I use the Trio as a great example, but the building I work in, no one's typically in there Saturday and Sunday, except Edwin and I. We could run that building at 76 degrees Saturday and Sunday, and then start bringing it down Monday morning back to, say, a 74. Same with south end of Orchid Terrace, where home health is. There's no need maybe to cool that. And we'd have to do some math and some calculations to really understand if that's most efficient. But there's opportunities to drive efficiencies by being able to capture this sort of data and manage it electronically. So if there's no further questions, we'll take one last alibis. None? All right, well, thank you very much and have a safe week.